6 of them. I got 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the,
Oh, no. Order the semi-monthly meeting of the State of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council to order. Today is Tuesday, March 10, 2026. I would ask that the record reflect the council members that are present here this evening, as well as CRMC staff present this evening as well. On our agenda, the first matter is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. We are passing on that right now. Technically, we're just finishing something up with the minutes, so we will do that one at the next meeting. So number 2 on our agenda will be subcommittee report. I would ask Ms. Miguel if there's anything to report on subcommittee reports.
Yes, just one, Mr. Chair. The Rights of Way Subcommittee met last night in the town of Westerly to continue their hearings on the Spring Avenue matter. The proponents continue to present their case, and witnesses were cross-examined, one witness. And right now, staff is working to put together a more aggressive schedule to keep this matter moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Laura on that report as it relates to the subcommittee? Okay, staff report. Anything to add?
Two staff reports. The first is I'm sitting in this chair tonight because the executive director, Jeff Willis, is over at the State House testifying on 2 bills. The first one is H7677, which is described to me as a housekeeping bill, where there's a distinction made between like offshore energy cables and telecommunication cables. And it also reiterates the General Assembly's authority over submerged land leases greater than 25 acres. The other bill is H8216. That proposes that the council staff revisit the water type classifications 1 through 4 with regard to policies and regulations related to erosion, sea level rise, and the increased frequency intensity of storms. That bill would create a 7-member advisory committee to advise staff on the development, on the reassessment of these water type policies and regulations. The advisory committee would be established by January 1st, 2027, and they'd have 2 years to come out with the report.
Okay.
One other thing.
Sure.
Mr. Willis and I, Director Willis and I were in Washington, D.C. last week for the program managers meeting where all the coastal programs from throughout the U.S., including Guam, the Pacific Islands, get together, exchange ideas, discuss what's going on in our jurisdictions. We also met with the Coastal States Organization, which is like an advocacy group for us.
Okay. Any questions of Laura on her report? None. Move to our agenda applications, which have been out to notice for 30 days and are before the council for review and action. First one being 2025-12-033, BDPS LLC. Application to retain temporary improvements to a work trestle structure located over tidal waters and establish a new structural perimeter limit around the structure located at plat 16 lot 1-1 at 100 Water Street, East Providence, Rhode Island. Are the parties present on that particular matter? And if so, can they come forward?
Mr. Chair, my name is Craig Wood.
before Mr. Wood, before you start, let me swear you all in. Please raise your right hands. you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your names and spell them for the record.
Charles E. Booth III, CHARLES number 3, the third. Property owner, an applicant. My name is Craig Wood, CRAIGWOOD. I'm a wetlands biologist with Jacobs Engineering. Donald Costello, DONALDCOST, and I'm the engineer of RICRMP plans.
All right. Before you do any presentation to the council, I will have our staff give an update to the council. Who has this one, please?
That's me,
Mason.
Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So as you said, the applicant's looking to make permanent these temporary improvements to this work trestle and establish their SPL around it. Just some background. So the applicant's property is located on the east bank of the Seacomp River, just north of the Washington Bridge. So there was an existing steel trestle structure there, and part of the Washington Bridge demo permit and application that came in, they were authorized to make some temporary improvements to this work trestle. Those improvements consisted of placing new timber and concrete block footings along the existing riprap shoreline. They installed a wider deck, and then small amount of landside fill grading, basically up in the laydown area to kind of match grades of laydown areas to that new deck they put on top of the work trestle. So overall, the intent of these improvements was really for aiding and transfer of equipment for that Washington Bridge project. So transferring equipment to and from land and water, and then I believe all of the concrete, rebar, all of that rubble got transported through over this trestle up the land and properly disposed of. So it was a key piece of infrastructure for that project. And as such, the applicant wishes to obtain these temporary improvements so they continue utilizing the structure. Couple items of note: American Equipment and Moran Recovery Services. They work out of this facility. They work heavily in the maritime industry. So staff's opinion that these improvements are supporting blue economy and the surrounding or dependent businesses. So staff's opinion that this project applies with CRMP. They recommend approval with standard stipulations, and there's one additional stipulation I put in my staff report, and I'll just state it here for the record. That stipulation was that the work trestle structure shall be used only for loading and offloading vessels. No vessels shall remain berthed at this structure for more than a 12-hour period. The intent of that stip basically just to highlight that the structure is solely for loading and offloading equipment, not for a vessel to be permanently moored there for any period of time. Don't want to turn into a marina or anything like that. So
Has that stipulation been delivered to the applicant?
yes, I believe we discussed that, and I gave them a report as well. So
Yes.
Okay. Any questions of Mason from the council? And they're not seeking any special use, special exception, or variances, correct?
no, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anything to add?
If I may speak, we really didn't come to make a presentation. We think it's a pretty straightforward application request, and we're here to answer questions. Is there anything you would like to add?
Any questions of the applicant or his representatives from the council? Is there anyone else present this evening to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone present this evening to speak in opposition of this application? Is the council in a posture for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, based on the staff report, testimony from our staff, extremely brief comments from the applicant. I move to approve the application with all normal stipulations in the additional stipulation that was set out in the record and is contained in the staff report.
Okay, motion's been made by Ms. Izzy. Is a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gagnon. Any discussion? Hearing none. I will poll the council. Mr. Flynn.
Aye.
Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Mr. Russolino.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye. Application is approved. Thank you. Thank you, Mason. Next matter is John and Aidan MacSWEENEY. It's an application to construct and maintain a 25-foot by 40-foot single-family dwelling with a driveway, deck, and stormwater management system. The Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Program requires a 50-foot naturally vegetated buffer zone under section 1.1.11 and a 25-foot construction setback under section 1.1.9. The proposed dwelling is surrounded on three sides by a coastal feature. A buffer zone of 25 feet is proposed on one portion of the coastal feature. No buffer zone is proposed on the remaining area of coastal feature. No construction setback is proposed. The application proposes a buffer variance of 50% to 100%. A setback variance of 100% is proposed under section 1.1.7. The coastal features at the site consist of coastal wetland on the south and west sides of the site and an erosive coastal bluff on the east side. It's located at plat 356, lots 162, 163, and 204, Arlington Avenue, Warwick, Rhode Island. Are the parties present on that particular matter? Can you come forward, please?
You're both witnesses, correct?
Yes.
Please raise your right hands. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your name and identify yourselves for the record.
Name is John W. MacSWEENEY, MacSWEENEY.
My name is Aidan MacSWEENEY, AIDAN MacSWEENEY.
Please keep your voices up. Thank you.
Okay, prior to any comments to the council, I will ask our staff to report on this. Who has this one, please? All right, Sean, thank you.
Proposal is to construct 25 by 40 three-story dwelling on a 15,000 square foot parcel. Two lots, type 2 waters on the east side of Warwick Neck. Dwelling will be serviced by municipal sewer and water for pervious driveway, stormwater, grade changes, foundation. The applicant received a sign off from the sewer tie. Stated in the document submitted that the sewer lateral was not installed at the site. The sewer authority has stated that a lateral may be run to the at the nearest structure also includes a 25 by 12 square foot deck with an access stairway. At the nearest point, the foundation of the dwelling would be 12 feet from the coastal feature. The deck would be 2 feet from the feature. While decks are not subject to the setback requirement, the footings for the deck would be directly abutting the coastal feature with no separation. For section 1.1.11, buffer zone of 50 feet is required. The applicant proposes a buffer zone of 25 feet, area of flag C1 through C5. No buffer zone is proposed from flag C5 to C17. This represents a variance to the required buffer of between 50 and 100%. Construction setback is required from the inland edge of the buffer, section 1.1. No setback is proposed as there is grading in the stormwater management system in the area closest to the foundation. Setbacks offer protection to the coastal wetlands and buffer zones from nearby development impacts such as sedimentation, pollution, and also direct wildlife disturbance. Setback area also provides an area for maintenance and access. Reduced setback also exposes the dwelling to flooding. parking area, and stormwater BMP, a rain garden, is located directly abutting the coastal feature, in one case within 2 feet of it, and also have the potential to increase impacts to the nearby wetland to be impacted by damage from coastal floods. Now, coastal buffer zones serve many functions, including protection of water quality by capturing sediment, solutions, and absorbing nutrients from stormwater. The effectiveness of vegetated buffers aided by the program is best management practice for control of non-point source runoff, and is dependent upon the ability to reduce the velocity of runoff flow to allow for the deposition of sediments and filtration of biological nutrients within the vegetated area. Protection of coastal habitat is also an important function of coastal buffer zone. Flood control is identified as an important function there. Coastal buffer zones aid in flood control by reducing velocity of runoff and by encouraging infiltration of precipitation and runoff into the ground rather than allowing runoff to flow over land, flood low-lying areas. The project site is located in a VE17 flood zone, and the site is prone to flooding at high tide and storm events. Site abuts type 2 waters as defined by CRMC. Per section 1.11 B6. In order to enhance conservation, protect water quality, and maintain low-intensity use characteristics of type 1 and 2 waters, greater buffer widths shall be applied along the coastline abutting these water types. Regulations require a 50-foot buffer in this case. 25-foot buffer is proposed in the area of flag C5, C1 through C5. The rest of the lot between C5 and C17, no buffer zone. Coastal feature on the east side of the site, the east and south side actually, from flags 1 to 10, is an erosive coastal bluff. Based on the minimum amount of buffer zone provided at the site, and staff's opinion that the functions and values of the buffer would be significantly reduced. For much of the site, there would be no buffer zone to mitigate the impacts of flooding and erosion and to provide effective stormwater management. Section 1.2.2 C1H states that it is the council's goal to provide for maximum coastal buffer zone with protecting wetlands, protect abutting coastal wetlands that are adjacent to type 1 and 2 waters. In those cases where the council may grant a variance on small lots, minimum coastal buffer width should be no less. And no buffer is proposed in this case in the section that abuts the coastal. The applicant has asserted in their application that there are no adverse environmental impacts as a result of construction at the site, citing the use of silt fences and planting screening vegetation. And in this case, the limit of disturbance on the side that abuts the wetland is the coastal feature. There's no setback. It is staff's opinion that there would be significant negative impacts from construction at the site. Review of aerial photos shown in my report and CRMC's shoreline change maps show significant erosion has occurred in the site. Construction at the site and removal of natural vegetation would likely increase erosion at the site and be detrimental to water quality. The proposed rain garden would be located directly adjacent to the coastal feature, diminishing its effects for treating runoff and exposing it to potential erosion. There would be no coastal buffer adjacent to the on-site wetland. Although the dwelling would be elevated, much of the lot and surrounding area are subject to frequent flooding. Development of the parcel would expose the site to additional pollutants from the potential use of fertilizers and from automobiles being parked and stored. Much of the neighborhood densely developed predates CRMC regulations. Conditions at the site pose significant challenges to development. The coastal feature on the side of the site, on one side of the site, is an eroding coastal bluff, which is a significant loss of land. Per CRMC's shoreline change maps, 116 feet lost between 1939 and 2003. The rest of the coastal feature is a coastal wetland, which is subject to flooding. The street frontage of the lot is frequently flooded during high tide and storm events. These conditions are not unique to the site, but occur commonly in this area. Relief from any hardship must be unique to the site and must not be mere economic diminution. Property was purchased by the applicant in December of 2023. These conditions have existed at the site for some time and were present at the time of purchase. The exercise of due diligence in researching the property and applicable regulations would have identified these concerns to any potential buyer. And it's a concern that it potentially sets a precedent that if someone can purchase a lot that is significantly variant to the regulations without having done any research and homework, seek a permit, that it could set a precedent for future properties that are similarly challenging to develop. It's the opinion of staff that the variance criteria have not been met and that the variance should be good. Conditions at the site present significant challenges to development due to documented erosion that has occurred and continues to occur. Flooding at the site is also a major challenge. The roadway in front of the proposed structure floods during high tide and storm events. The wetland at the site provides flood storage capacity and will be negatively impacted by the proposed development. Stormwater management system proposed is located 2 feet from the eroding coastal feature. An island stormwater design and installation standards manual requires that all rain gardens be located outside of buffer zones and setbacks. The system would likely not function as designed and would be threatened by erosion from storm events as soon as it was constructed, and would result in inadequate stormwater runoff, having negative impacts on water quality and the wetlands at the site. The CRMC shoreline change maps show that the site has eroded 116 feet in 1939 and 2003 and has an annual erosion rate of 1.8 feet. Review of aerial photos shows significant erosion at the site in recent years beyond 2000. Constructing a new dwelling on an erosive type 2 shoreline likely result in that dwelling and related infrastructure being threatened by future storms. Proposed 25-foot buffer in the area located from flag C1 to C5 would not adequately protect the site, as there would be no buffer protecting the rest of the coastal feature from flag C5 through C17. The area from C5 to C10 is also part of the erosive coastal bluff and receive no protection from the buffer zone. Dwelling would be located 12 feet from the coastal wetland at the nearest point. Deck and access stairs would be just 2 feet from the wetland edge. And reviewing the site plan, it's really hard to envision how you could even physically construct the foundation and the deck footings without having direct impacts to the wetlands. Footings would be literally 2 feet from the wetland edge, which is where the erosion controls are proposed to be located. It just seems by the time you clear the site and get equipment in there to perform that construction, it would result in an actual physical alteration of the wetland, which has not been proposed as part of the application. But looking at the site plan, it's hard to envision that it could be accomplished without that being the result. For the reasons stated above, it's staff's opinion that the application does not meet the criteria for variance rating. If this application for resident to development should be denied. Should the council approve the project, staff request a deed restriction for the development activities at the site, such as buffer management, future expansion and construction. Alternatively, should the council deny the project, an application for reasonable valuation necessity likely be supported by staff.
Any questions of Sean from the council? Hearing none. Gentlemen, like to present?
I thought I would start. I mean, I can read everything that I put in my detailed write-up, if that is what you'd like. I thought I would start with my diligence at the front end of the project, what my thought process was, and like that might be helpful.
Okay.
And to assist with that, I did put together some exhibits, some testimony exhibits, and I can submit them if that's a reason allowed to do that.
There's actually a deadline to submit. And, you know, kind of puts the council at a disadvantage if you're handing them papers out now.
Well, I can describe,
Sure can.
describe. So, in the fall, I saw a real estate listing for Arlington Avenue. My goal and objective with this is that my son, time I just graduated from Brian. CPA was going to, my idea was to basically go 50-50 in a project, building a home where he would live. That was the underlying premise. So that's why he's the joint owner. He's gonna, intention is that he's gonna live there. So that's residents, not gonna live there.
Excuse me. I think you're covering up the microphone with your papers and I'm not hearing it.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
Thanks.
So I saw the listing for the property. And I was very excited. It's a waterfront property. Be able to advertise this, be able to, there's plenty of room here. There's 3 small contiguous lots, 2 lots with upland, significant upland. The third kind of like bonus lot, which is in a reed type of wetland area to the. So I went down and I looked at it, and part of it was that work was putting forth a bayside sewer project. And what it was allowing was that all the streets in this area to have sewer access. And that was really a change fact from, I could see that on the property there was some perk testing and the like from past there. And to me that seemed like a significant development. I would have a sewer. So I started by calling the Warwick DPW and trying to talk to the folks involved with the Bayside Sewer Project and asked them, I was interested in this property, it was for sale, and that I wanted, as part of my diligence, to understand, could it be connected to the sewer? So I home there for, yeah. So I ended up, I started with an admin person. They referred me to the, like the engineer that was on site on it, and telephone. He basically said that, sewer cover was right out in front of it. Wasn't in the original plan, but it could be connected. Yeah. So in my mind, that kind of took that issue that would now have, would be able to have it. So what I had in my exhibits here, like, is I looked on all the streets that are close by Arlington Avenue here. There's a Long Meadow Ave, it's a Shore Ave, it's a Samuel Broughton Ave, which is one street over, and it's the Arlington Ave. And on based upon my research, there were 4 projects on the ocean were approved by the CRMC. I believe they were administratively approved. First one is at 9 Long Meadow Avenue, 6 Long Meadow Avenue. I have, like, on my telephone, I took pictures of those projects. Were substantially, how the homes were on stilts, the new construction to get the raised elevation, the like, and they were substantially complete. I took photos of those, and I said, boy, they did a real nice job with this. And then there was, I saw them. Samuel Groton have. And basically some still pylons that in place there. I looked at the his tax card, the CRMC approvals, and that one seemed to be in process. That it's basically built substantially in 2025. Periodically go by, take some updated photos. I have ones I put in the exhibit were basically photos from last Thursday, basically about the property with the current status. Then the other project, I think at my diligence time, there was no work done at that point. There was a home that's, this is on Shore Ave at the end. And it had a home, and I think it was demo. And basically, I think what they ended up doing was they demoed it. They looked closer to the water. They built out the new home there on the stills. So like it's a lot. It looks like 2 lots. I don't know if I think more than me, they wanted me to administratively combine them and jump through all of them to do that, which I did. So I basically showing that, hey, in this particular area, like I watched a few CRMC hearings and the like, and some of these cases come up, you have issues where but there aren't. We have this new home in an area with all old homes, and it's going to look different money, and certain neighbors might not be happy with that, and the like. In this particular case, this area is basically being improved in the last 3 years, significant. So that was part of my diligence and my thinking. So, hey, this was being done in this. It's something that I'd like to do, but it's Arlington Avenue. So I searched the database and also representations from the seller that there was no predecessor in title CRMC application historically filed and expected to get issued on non-conforming lots. And so in talking to the building department, I asked about the view of process and the like, and the approvals, and basically said is the CMC process is a lengthy process. It's not quick. It's very fact specific to the way that what you're gonna construct, mitigation that you might do with getting setbacks furthest away from the ocean bluff feature and closer to the road. And that was one factor. The second thing, that was the elevation of the property in particular was very high, even higher than when you would build up the home, higher than some of the properties on the street. And that to me was substantial and significant. So I ended up making the decision that after doing that diligence, that I made an offer on the property. I purchased it with ended up purchasing with my son for $160,000, and that initially we were very excited about it, and I wanted to get an area down there where we could like pull off and maybe like park our car and not be on Straight. With that involved, my son and I trimmed some knotweed in the area. And we ended up, my thought was I was gonna spread a little, like 6 yards of like gravel in the area, so I could basically pull off. I received a notice of CRMC violation, basically that unauthorized work that I had done. At the time, I didn't realize that was, I thought it was tied to more of the building and not what I was doing just off the edge of the street. So I made a mistake, a little over eager, and I ended up basically signing a consent agreement dated October 21, 2024. Eventually, the reason that was so late is that it's like this process of, I learned a lot about coastal rules and you have to jump through to get to a project. And so it took a while, and I wanted to make sure I had enough lead time to be able to submit a consent application. So I then I met with the board, suggested that I start with the planning department, and I meetings with them and went through their rules, and I also met with the zoning department, and discussions with them. I said, proceed with this. Number one, that I needed to administer to find the lots. Their zoning regulations, and that the setbacks that I was proposing, is looking at the topography of the land and the elevation of the, to basically 7.5 feet closer to the street, and from the city-owned lot, which what it really is in the back is it's a low grade lot compared to the street. So that particular lot in that area, based on my own observation now in the last 2 years, it gets, if there is a big storm, rain item, the water come down the street a little bit, it'll flow into that area. There is particularly that January 2024 storm, which was significant, and they some pictures that were submitted. It's a opposition, and they did that storm had flooding that it was talking to my neighbor at 5 Arlington there at the time across the street, and by the testimony, actually the written board, meanwhile, they both said it's the most flooding area that they had ever seen in 15 years. Her comments was that area at the back became completely flooded, and the lowland and some of the pictures that you see on the other side became flooded, and I call it the bonus spot, the 234 on the right, which has some reeds and like, again, it's already low. The water basically came through, went out, came over like the area where I had proposed the driveway, the lower area right in front of the city. So that area of the water came. And then within a couple of 2 or 3 hours, I guess the guys, water basically went in and it went out. On that big storm, all the uplands were direction that my project is proposed. It's all on it. It'll be like an 8.5 foot average NAU BPI 88. baseline elevation. And then I'll have like 9-foot stilts on top of that to get to the first floor. So if you're looking at the storm tools and you say on a 100-year, 3-foot level sea rise and a 100-year storm, I think with my 8.5 and the 9 feet, I've got about 17.5 feet of clearance and 4 feet of clearance beyond the where that the 100-year storm with a 3-foot level sea rise. So that's how the plan got on this. So I had to go to the Warwick zoning and February 24 zoning board of appeals, and at that zoning board of appeals, this was to get setback 7.5 feet close to the street and 3 feet back from the low land that's owned by the city behind my property. So what the zoning board of appeals, I think Mrs. Green provided some testimony, hearing, and provided the pictures that I see all over in these reports and the opposition. And they basically put in there within my packet was that they contingently approved. They went through the hardship analysis under the board statute, and that they said that prior to the issuance of the building permit, the city engineering program manager shall approve a qualified grading plan must be completed in a manner so that no additional runoff directed towards abutting properties or the city right away. So that was, and this was recorded. It's in my pack. Subsequent to that, talking like constituent surveys who worked on my plan lengthily over an extended period of time, signed 9 of their concept of the rain garden was proffered, and I said, hey, that sounds like a good idea. And given the construct of what I had to work with, the location of the rain garden, the idea would be to any runoff from the roof, any runoff from the ground itself, to basically have it directed into the rain garden and put it in the location that it's at the high. You look at the detailed plan and the elevations that are therein. It's the way that's positioned is between 7 and 8 feet. And NAVDI 88. So the idea is, and it's in the back corner, the furthest away from the bluff of the ocean. And it's not, the idea is that it would not become inundated. That the likelihood, because that high ground has not, at least to date, that I'm aware of, never been inundated to date. Yeah. So that's why the location was picked in that back corner, because it was behind the home, and it has to be somewhere on my lot. I can't put it. I'm not going to put it on low ground anywhere else, and so that's why that was picked for the locus. So in reading, the idea was some of the plantings and like getting the SAMP and some of the mitigation measures and the like. It's I said, I kind of like to put into the plan some cranberry bushes. I got the wrong pronunciation on them. Kind of between where the grading is and where the 25-foot buffer, which is basically trees and some light type of vegetation under that. So to kind of plan a row of those, as I mentioned in some of my readings, it's like have a transition between where the graded area would be and where the natural buffer would be. Kind of to mark that. And it certainly would, it couldn't hurt, and it could avoid some erosion risk of very points. Thank you. I think I was hearing a lot of comments about this area was frequently flooded. So it's, again, the high ground area where this is, it's not been frequent. It's basically the street area that comes off of at the end of Arlington Ave, which is part because the topography of the street is slightly inclined down. So in a heavy rainstorm, the water runs down the street to the lowest area and coagulates at the end of the street. And then in front of that, there's a rock, there's a big pile of gravel and sand mix in the lake. There's a little bit of drainage area left-hand side of it, next to the neighbor of 5 Arlington has a full shoreline protection stone betterment treatment. It's good. It's there on the left. So the front from the ocean side, with the bluff is eroded. Information and belief, I don't think any tree that's ever come down there has ever been removed. So when you walk the property, look at that. There's, and I have pictures that I took myself in the presentation. There are several fairly large trees that have fallen over the years. And I think, from my own observation, I think maybe even 1 or 2 might have was close to falling, or even had something in that big January of 2000 storm. There was some significant erosion, and I think every coastal area, there was tremendous amounts of damage on the particular storm. It was a highly catastrophic storm. Took a lot of damage and erosion that happened in that particular. I don't, at least the time since I've owned it, I don't think there's been significant erosion on other occasions. That storm was being the hype, which again, it's the ones where the photos are involved, the exhibits that